Joseph?
All right. At the very start, I'm going to say that I believe we need projects like this in Wildomar. Location is the key. I want to thank all those that are here in attendance and those that are online. Janice Hare, I wish I was as eloquent as you were earlier.
Good job.
Same to Corey Stair, very well spoken. I'm going to preface my remarks by saying that I strive to make my comments as productive as I can, though sometimes being productive looks differently from one person to another. I will say that I don't like being put into the position where I have to either gloss over an issue or lay it out in all its glorious ugliness. By the end of my prepared remarks, I may be the most hated man in the W, or not. So when I sought election and then took the job to represent the residents and the city's interests, I knew that there were going to be difficult days where the public was entitled to hear some real opinions and not to have me sugarcoat a serious matter in the hopes of avoiding injuring someone's pride. We all make mistakes. Isn't it much better to own up to them than to risk looking like our president recently did when he doubled down saying that he wouldn't do anything differently when it came to withdrawing from Afghanistan? This is a bad evening for Wildomar. It's a bad evening for everyone in this room. Well, not for everyone. One group is ready to pop the bubbly as they're another step closer to increasing their portfolio, no matter what damage they do in the process to a community that they don't live in and will rarely visit. There is blame enough for everyone in this room to own. I'll start with myself. I first heard of Tres Lagos in January 2019 when I was receiving an orientation as a new member of the City Council. Getting a brief overview of all the projects in the pipeline was a metaphorical sipping from a fire hose. The next time I heard about Tres Lagos was in October of that year, when County Supervisor Kevin Jeffries tapped me on the shoulder and said that I might want to know what's brewing in my district. I took it to staff, and honestly, they didn't appear to share my concerns that this can't go there, nor the urgency to alert those that live nearby it. After several weeks of being willing to wait to get the information to the public, as requested by staff, being a team player like wearing this, I finally wrote a blog trying to spread the word in the final days of 2019 after a notice was published in the Press Enterprise regarding that property. That blog was the spearhead that got a January 2020 Board of Supervisors meeting dealing with the disposition of the property postponed for 6 months as Wildomar conferred with Kevin Jeffries' office on this matter. I have no idea what transpired during those meetings because, though I was earnest in wanting to be part of them, I wasn't invited to them. Though I don't know what was discussed there, I do know what wasn't done here. We never called for this to be an item on the agenda so that it could have been thoroughly discussed in either public or closed session. The people that will be affected the most, those that live within walking distance of Tres Lagos, were kept out of the loop, either intentionally or through oversight. That galls me to no end, and in my estimation, should be equally as vexing to the other 4 council members as is having Sacramento remove local control from us. This is going to affect one of Wildomar's nicest neighborhoods forever. All caps, 3 exclamation points. It would have been prudent for the city to punt, if nothing else. What do I mean by that? We should have jumped at the chance to take the land from the county as offered, even with all the strings attached, no matter how overpriced it seemed at the moment, and then, later, well after COVID, consider what to do with it. We all know the pace of government. Even on the fast track, look how things crawl along compared to the real world. If nothing else, it would have bought the neighborhood some much needed time to choose their best course of action, if any. Imagine if we would have allowed ample time for the local HOA groups to coalesce, then potentially come to a meeting and suggest they purchase the land, or might have suggested that we go into partners with them to create a park. Who knows what could have been considered? Feasible or unfeasible, the residents were denied the chance to even proffer such suggestions. There are many possibilities that never got discussed because it was handled by staff and not the council or the public. The way I see it, the worst case scenario would have been to let the county have it back at some time in the future, or maybe develop it as we're seeing done now. Again, sometime in the future, after we dealt with it on our own terms. But no, we didn't even have a serious discussion about it outside of one-on-one meetings. Whew. Now let's take a look at the group that is eager to swing a wrecking ball through the existing neighborhood for monetary gain, yet claims they have the best interests of the community in mind. I can be quoted in a July 2020 blog as saying, "From the 90-minute meeting I had, I believe they want to be good neighbors and want to show you what they have in mind." Talk about a swing and a miss on my part. Whoosh. I get it. They're not from the area. They've been dealing with this plot of land since before the dinosaurs roamed Winsong, practically alongside the real David A. Brown as he was dry farming from Elsinore to Murrieta. Great. But the moment they visited that area in the modern times and saw what had been built while their promised senior housing languished in want of funding, a decent group would have looked at each other and said, "Gosh, we can't build out here with a clean conscience now. Look what's surrounding those 10 acres. Maybe they did say something like that. I wasn't there. But now they have the power of SB 35 behind them. They're in charge. Not too dissimilar to when a preschooler is in possession of a loaded Glock wanting a cookie. It's their show, and their demands must be met. So, moving on to the last group, actually the primary group that owns the lion's share of the culpability behind Tres Lagos becoming a reality, is the one-party rule that has been entrenched in Sacramento for decades, and those that have blindly voted for them over and over. I'm famously nonpartisan to the point that I don't mind giving Trumpies as much finger wagging as I do the wokety-woke goons on the left. Both extremes are disastrous to the health of our culture. With that said, I seriously would like to see a show of hands of all those that proudly voted for Brown and then Newsom, not to mention the rest of the blue team, that has systematically turned this once great state into a pathetic shell of itself, with one asinine policy and law after another. They are the ones that made SB 35 become the real-time nightmare that we see at Cat Road and Arnett. If you voted for them, you voted for Tres Lagos, whether you're willing to own up to it or not. With that, I am not voting in favor of this item.
I just have a couple of questions.